I thought my family looked down on me because I chose art over ambition. But then a secret I'd kept for 3 years was revealed on the single most important night of my sister's life, and now I finally understand they didn't look down on me. They simply couldn't see me at all. For years they called my passion a joke, not with overt cruelty, but with the quiet, soul-crushing condescension reserved for a disappointing child. In their world of polished marble and corporate law, my life's work, the art and science of olfaction, was a frivolous hobby. My sister Clarissa, the golden child, scaled the ladders of a top-tier Manhattan law firm. I, Julian Vance, spent my days in a small lab, chasing ghosts of scents, trying to capture memories in a bottle. Every family gathering was a masterclass in comparison. Clarissa's latest multi-million-dollar merger was the main course. My work was the weird garnish everyone politely ignored. They never asked about the chemistry, the dedication, the near-obsessive passion it took to isolate a single molecule. They just smiled that tight, pitying smile and asked if I was still making nice smells in the basement. But what they never knew was that one of those nice smells was a revolution. A synthetic molecule I created, capable of replicating the scent of a nearly extinct orchid, was silently acquired by the most prestigious fragrance house in the world. And that hobby had made me a multimillionaire. I became a ghost in my own family, a silent success story they were blind to. Until one evening, at a party celebrating my sister's ascension to partner, a place I was meant to be invisible, the CEO of that very company, a woman more myth than legend, stepped out of the shadows. She found me, holding a glass of cheap champagne, and in front of everyone she didn't just see me, she announced me. That was the moment the bottle shattered. Not glass, but the carefully constructed reality of the Vance family. My name is Julian Vance, and for years I let my family define my worth by their own limited senses. I let them believe I was a failure while I was quietly building a legacy they couldn't comprehend. But today, I'm telling you the whole story because their blindness didn't protect me. It only delayed the explosion. Before I share it all, I want to know I'm not alone in this room. Let me know you're here with me. Just drop a hello in the comments or tell me what part of the world you're watching from. I'd love to feel that connection. And if my story resonates with the quiet battles you've fought, please consider subscribing. Your support is the validation that truly matters. Thank you. And now, let me take you back to where it all began. The first time I understood my place in the family hierarchy, I was 10 years old. The event was the annual Greenwood Elementary School Science Fair. My project was ambitious, perhaps comically so for a 5th grader. I had spent 2 months attempting to capture and preserve the specific scent of my grandmother's garden after a rainstorm, a complex blend of damp earth, petunias, and wet stone. I had a series of mason jars filled with soil, distilled water and flower petals, all connected by rudimentary copper tubing. I called it an olfactory snapshot. Clarissa, who was 12, had presented a project on the principles of economic supply and demand, complete with pie charts and a flawlessly typed-up report. When my parents, Richard and Eleanor, arrived, they spent 20 minutes at her station, my father beaming, asking her pointed questions about market equilibrium. When they finally shuffled over to my corner, my mother glanced at my collection of jars and sighed, a faint, almost inaudible sound of disappointment. "Oh, Julian," she'd said, forcing a smile, "what a creative little hobby." My father peered at my handwritten diagram. Smell-o-vision? Son, the real world runs on numbers, on assets, not sniffing dirt. He patted Clarissa's shoulder. "Now your sister, she gets it. She's going to be a powerhouse." I remember the sting of those words more than any childhood scrape. It wasn't anger, it was dismissal. My passion wasn't just misunderstood, it was deemed worthless, a flight of fancy in a family that worshipped tangible success. This dynamic became the wallpaper of my life. Family dinners were interrogations disguised as conversations. "Julian, have you considered getting a real estate license? A good way to learn about assets." My father would suggest, sliding the salt shaker as if it were a chess piece. Clarissa would chime in, not maliciously, but with an air of genuine, if condescending, concern. "Jules, there's no money in hobbies. You're so smart. Why not apply that brain to something that matters? You could go to business school." The object of their scorn, my lab, started in the basement of their Greenwich, Connecticut home. It was my sanctuary. I saved up my allowance and birthday money to buy second-hand beakers, a cheap distillation kit, and raw essential oils. While my friends were playing video games, I was learning the molecular structure of galaxolide, trying to recreate the scent of old books or the metallic tang of a new city. They called it my potion room. When guests came over, my mother would close the basement door and say with a light laugh, "Oh, don't mind that, it's just Julian's little laboratory, our resident mad scientist." The laughter that followed always felt like 1,000 tiny cuts. The breaking point, the true catalyst for my departure, came on my 21st birthday. My parents had thrown a joint party for Clarissa and me, as her 23rd birthday was the same week. The house was filled with their friends, bankers, lawyers, society doyens. Clarissa received a Tiffany bracelet and the keys to a new convertible. My father gave a toast to "my brilliant daughter, the future legal eagle, who makes us proud every single day." Then he turned to me, a glass of champagne held aloft. "And to Julian. May he one day find a way to bottle his potential and sell it." The room chuckled. It was meant to be a joke, a classic Richard Vance zinger. But in that moment, something inside me went cold and quiet. I saw my future laid out before me, a lifetime of being the family anecdote, the quirky, unsuccessful brother. Later that night, while cleaning up, I overheard my father talking to my uncle. "I just don't get the boy. He's got a good mind, but he wastes it on nonsense. Smells? What kind of a legacy is that? Clarissa, she's building an empire. He's making air fresheners." A month later, I packed 2 suitcases, emptied my small bank account, and moved to Baltimore. I chose it for its distance and its affordability. I left a note on my perfectly made bed. "I'm going to find a way to bottle my potential, but I won't be selling it." I didn't speak to them for 6 months. My new life was a stark contrast to the manicured lawns of Greenwich. I rented a cramped apartment above a noisy laundromat in Hampton. The place perpetually smelled of detergent and damp concrete, a constant, ironic reminder of my mission. For money, I worked as a lab tech at a chemical supply company during the day, a menial job that paid the bills and, more importantly, gave me access to discounted equipment. My nights and weekends belonged to my real work. I converted my tiny spare bedroom into a laboratory. It was a far cry from the pristine labs I dreamed of. The walls were lined with cheap shelving, crowded with glass vials, rotary evaporators, and a gas chromatograph I'd bought with a loan I took out under the pretense of home improvement. This was my bunker, my monastery. Here, the world's judgment fell away, replaced by the pure, cold logic of chemistry. My obsession was a single, elusive target, the Phalaenopsis silenti, the ghost orchid of the Philippines. Its scent was legendary among botanists and perfumers, a complex symphony of night-blooming, jasmine, green almond, and a strange, milky aquatic note. It was also nearly extinct, its habitat destroyed, making its natural essence priceless and unobtainable. The challenge wasn't just to imitate it, but to resurrect it, to create a stable synthetic molecule that was identical to the original. It was the Everest of modern perfumery. The work was brutal and isolating. I filled hundreds of notebooks with failed formulas. Some attempts smelled acrid and chemical, like burning plastic. Others were flat and lifeless, a pale imitation of the vibrant scent I was chasing based on old botanical descriptions and molecular analysis data I'd sourced from university archives. I lived like a hermit, my world shrinking to the space between my microscope and my hot plate. My diet consisted of instant noodles and cheap coffee. Friendships withered. Dates were out of the question. How could I explain to someone that I couldn't go out because I was on the verge of stabilizing a sesquiterpene? Lactone. During this time, the only person I communicated with regularly was Dr. Aris Thorne, my old organic chemistry professor from college. He was a quiet, brilliant man who had seen a spark in me that my family never had. I would email him my equations, my frustrations, my small incremental breakthroughs. He never offered solutions, but his replies were a lifeline. "Keep chasing it, Julian," he'd write back. "The work is the reward. The world will catch up eventually." After 2 years of relentless effort, it happened. It was 3 in the morning on a Tuesday. The lab was cold, the only light coming from the hum of the chromatograph. I had been working on a new pathway, a risky, counterintuitive approach to bonding the key esters. I injected the latest sample. The machine whirred, and a graph began to trace its way across the screen. I watched the peaks form, and there it was, a perfect match to the data from the original flower. My hands shook as I opened the vial. The scent that bloomed in the stale air was breathtaking. It wasn't just an imitation. It was alive. It was the smell of moonlight, of damp jungle leaves, of a flower so rare it was almost a myth. I felt a dizzying rush of triumph and exhaustion. I hadn't just created a perfume, I had captured a ghost. I knew what I had was more than just a fragrance. It was a patent, a piece of intellectual property worth a fortune to the right company. I spent the next month drafting a flawless patent application. I named the molecule Vancea silenti, a quiet act of defiance. I sent the patent and a single sealed sample vial to only one place, Chevalier Fragrances, the most revered and secretive fragrance house in Geneva, Switzerland. It was headed by the legendary Anya Sharma, a woman known for her discerning nose and ruthless business acumen. It was a Hail Mary. For 6 weeks, I heard nothing. The silence was agonizing. I began to doubt myself, to think it was all a delusion. Then an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line was one word, Geneva. The email was from Ms. Sharma herself. It was brief and direct. "We have analyzed your sample. Name your price and a time to meet. We will fly you here." The negotiations were a blur. I was flown first class to Geneva, a world away from my grimy Baltimore apartment. I sat in a sleek, minimalist boardroom across from Anya Sharma. She was a striking woman in her late 60s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through me. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Your molecule is not just a success, Mr. Vance," she said, her voice a low, precise murmur. "It is a paradigm shift. It will be the cornerstone of our next decade of perfumery." She made an offer that made the air leave my lungs. $15 million. It wouldn't be a lump sum, but a structured buyout of the patent, paid in 3 installments of $5 million over 3 years, plus a continuing role as a private consultant for Chevalier. I accepted. Without a counteroffer. The money was secondary to the validation. Someone, the most important someone in my field, saw what I had done. They understood. Part of the deal was absolute secrecy. Chevalier wanted to build an entire campaign around the new scent, codenamed Spectre, and unveil it as a surprise to the industry. No one could know. So I returned to Baltimore. The first $5 million wire hit my account. I stared at the number on my banking app for a full hour, a hysteric laugh bubbling in my chest. Nothing in my life had changed, yet everything had. I quit my job at the chemical supply company. I moved into a slightly nicer apartment. But I kept the lab. I kept working. And I told no one. My family's calls had become more infrequent, settling into a pattern of obligatory holiday check-ins. "Still tinkering with your smells, Julian?" my mother would ask. "That's nice." Clarissa would get on the phone to list her recent courtroom victories, her promotions, her new condo. In Tribeca, I never mentioned Geneva. I never mentioned the money. What was the point? It was a language they wouldn't understand. Their idea of me was set in stone. I was Julian, the disappointment, the quirky artist, the boy sniffing dirt in a jar. Let them believe it. The silence was my shield. It was my secret, my victory, and in a strange way, it was my revenge. The invitation arrived via a crisp, cream-colored envelope with embossed lettering. It wasn't an invitation so much as a summons. Clarissa was being made a junior partner at her firm, a major milestone she had been ruthlessly pursuing for years. To celebrate, my parents were hosting a lavish party at the Oak Ridge Country Club, the kind of place where old money went to studiously ignore new money. The subtext was clear. Attendance was mandatory. My mother called the next day. "Julian, darling, you simply must come. It's the most important night of Clarissa's life. All the senior partners will be there. And please," she paused, a familiar edge to her voice, "wear a proper suit, not one of your artistic ensembles. Just try to look normal for one night. For your sister." A wave of the old resentment washed over me, but it was duller now, blunted by the secret reality of my life. The irony was thick enough to taste. The suit she wanted me to wear probably cost less than the taxi fare I took to the airport in Geneva. "I'll be there, Mom," I said, my voice flat. The night of the party, I walked into the grand ballroom of the country club, feeling like an anthropologist studying a foreign tribe. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, aged whiskey, and self-congratulation. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, casting a golden glow on clutches of men in tailored suits and women in glittering dresses. My family was holding court near the entrance. My father, chest puffed out, was shaking hands with a man who looked like he owned a small island. My mother, draped in pearls, was air-kissing everyone who passed. And then there was Clarissa. She was radiant, a shark in a silk dress. She radiated a kind of triumphant energy that demanded attention. She saw me, and her smile tightened for a fraction of a second before relaxing into practiced warmth. "Jules, you made it," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. "You look presentable. Good." She scanned me up and down. "Is that a new suit?" "It's a suit," I said. She patted my arm. "Well, try to mingle. Don't just stand in a corner talking about flowers. David Munson is here, the head of Munson Capital. Try not to scare him off." She winked, but it wasn't playful. It was a warning. I spent the first hour nursing a club soda, observing. I was a ghost at the feast. Relatives I hadn't seen in years gave me a brief, quizzical look before their eyes scanned the room for someone more important to talk to. I was a social dead end. During the speeches, my father stood at the podium, his voice thick with emotion. "I've always known my daughter was a star," he boomed. "From her first lemonade stand, where she outsourced the lemon squeezing and tripled her profits, I knew she was destined for greatness. Clarissa doesn't just work hard. She understands value. She builds things. She wins." The room applauded wildly. He didn't even mention my name. It was as if he only had one child. Later, as a string quartet played softly, I found myself standing near a large floral arrangement. The scent was cloying, a generic blend of lilies and roses. Then, through that bland floral fog, a different scent cut through. It was subtle, yet complex, and utterly unique. It was Spectre, my creation. My head snapped up. Standing a few feet away was a small group of people. One of them was David Munson, the finance titan Clarissa had pointed out. Next to him was his wife, a striking woman in an emerald green dress. And the scent was coming from her. I must have been staring, because she turned and gave me a polite, questioning smile. Before I could stop myself, I said, "Your perfume, it's extraordinary." Her smile widened. "Oh, thank you. It's a private commission. It's not even on the market yet. It's called Spectre." David Munson chuckled. "My wife, Amelia, has friends in high places. She was given a sample by the head of Chevalier herself. Apparently, it's their next big thing." My heart began to hammer against my ribs. At that moment, Clarissa glided over, her arm linked with my mother's. She'd seen me, talking to the Munsons, and was coming to perform damage control. "David! Amelia! I hope my brother isn't boring you with his niche interests," she said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. But Amelia Munson was still looking at me. "Not at all. Your brother has an excellent nose. He was just admiring my perfume." She turned to me. "You must be in the industry." Before I could answer, a low, clear voice cut through the quartet's music from behind me. "He is more than in the industry. He is the industry." The four of us turned. Standing there holding a small glass of water was Anya Sharma. She was the last person on earth I expected to see in this room. She looked just as she had in Geneva, impossibly elegant, radiating an aura of calm, unshakable power. A collective intake of breath came from my mother and Clarissa. They didn't know who she was, but they recognized power when they saw it. David Munson's jaw practically hit the floor. "Anya! What a surprise! I didn't know you." "We're a friend of the Vances." Anya's gaze swept past him, past my family, and settled on me. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Amusement, perhaps. "I am not," she said simply. "I am a friend of Mr. Munson's. But I came tonight because I heard Julian Vance would be here, and I have not had the chance to congratulate him publicly." She took a step forward, her presence silencing the conversations around us. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying easily through the sudden hush. "For those of you who celebrate achievement, you are in the presence of a true master." She looked directly at my stunned family. "Your son, your brother, Julian, is the creator of the scent Mrs. Munson is wearing. He is the artist we at Chevalier have been searching for over a decade. He is the winner of this year's Golden Alembic Award, the highest honor in our field." A stunned silence fell over the ballroom. You could hear a pin drop. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. My father's face went slack with confusion. Clarissa's triumphant smile had frozen, then curdled into a mask of disbelief. Anya Sharma was not finished. She let the silence hang for a moment before delivering the final blow. "We at Chevalier were so impressed with Mr. Vance's genius that 6 months ago we acquired the patent for his molecule, Vancea silenti, for the sum of $15 million. The sound that left my mother's lips was a strangled gasp. My father looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, but it was Clarissa's face I'll never forget. The color drained from it, replaced by a ghastly pale. The look in her eyes wasn't just shock, it was a furious, venomous rage, the rage of someone whose entire worldview had just been detonated without warning. Anya turned to me and gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "I trust this evening is no longer boring you, Julian," she murmured, then turned and walked away, the crowd parting for her as if she were royalty. The room erupted. In whispers, every eye was on me. No longer Julian the disappointment, no longer the ghost at the feast. I was someone else entirely. And as I looked at the wreckage of my family's faces, I felt a strange, cold calm. The shield of silence was gone, and I knew the war had just begun. The aftermath of Anya Sharma's revelation was not the joyous family reunion one might see in a movie. It was a quiet, tense, and deeply unsettling realignment of power. The drive home from the country club was conducted in absolute silence, a stark contrast to the triumphant mood on the way there. My father gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. My mother stared out the window, occasionally dabbing the corner of her eye with a tissue. Clarissa sat in the back, radiating a cold fury that was more terrifying than any outburst. For 2 days, A fragile truce of silence held. Then the assault began. It started not with an apology, but with a strategic maneuver. My mother called, her voice syrupy, with a false, cloying sweetness I hadn't heard in years. "Julian, darling, we were just so shocked, so wonderfully, wonderfully proud. Why on earth didn't you tell us?" "You never asked," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "Well, we're asking now," she chirped. "We want to hear everything. Your father and I were thinking we should have a proper family dinner, just us, to celebrate you. We'll make your favorite, that mushroom risotto." It was a trap, and I knew it. But a small, foolish part of me, the 10-year-old boy who just wanted his science project to be admired, agreed to go. The dinner was a surreal performance. The table was set with the best china. My father, suddenly an expert on the fragrance industry, kept talking about market disruption and brand potential. He kept refilling my wine glass, patting my shoulder, calling me son with a newfound proprietary pride. It was nauseating. Then Clarissa, ever the strategist, made her move. She let the dessert plates be cleared before she leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table. Her expression was one of intense, serious sincerity, the same face she probably used to charm juries. "Julian," she began, "I've been doing some thinking, and I have to admit I was wrong about you. We all were. You have a gift, a real monetizable gift." I waited, saying nothing. "The thing is," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "money like that, it needs to be managed. It needs to grow. You can't just let it sit in a bank account. It's dead money." My father nodded eagerly. "Your sister's right. You need to make your assets work for you." "And it just so happens," Clarissa said, her eyes gleaming, "that I'm on the ground floor of an incredible opportunity. A boutique hotel development in the Hudson Valley. The land is a steal. The permits are all but guaranteed. The initial investors stand to see a 300% return within 5 years. The only issue is a slight shortfall in the initial capital. To fund, they need another $2 million to close the deal." She paused, letting the number hang in the air. "I thought of you immediately. It would be the perfect family venture, the Vance legacy, branching out. You could get in on the ground floor." I stared at her, a cold knot forming in my stomach. It had taken them less than a week. They didn't see me, the son, the brother. They saw a resource, an asset, a walking, talking bank account that had miraculously appeared to solve their problems. "No," I said quietly. The shift in the room was instantaneous. The warmth evaporated. Clarissa's eyes hardened. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no, thank you. I'm not interested in real estate development." "Don't be a fool, Julian," my father snapped, his bonhomie vanishing. "This is a golden ticket. Your sister is a partner at one of the biggest firms in New York. She knows a good deal when she sees one." "My money is my own, Dad. It's for my work, for the foundation I plan to start." Clarissa let out a short, sharp laugh. "A foundation? For what? Saving endangered smells? Julian, be serious. This is the real world. This is about securing our family's future. Your future. My future is secure," I said, standing up. "I took care of it myself, without any of you." I placed my napkin on the table. "Thank you for the risotto. It was delicious." I walked out, leaving them sputtering in my wake. The next phase of the war began the following morning. Clarissa, deprived of the carrot, brought out the stick. She unleashed her legal skills, not in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. A story appeared on a popular New York business and society blog. The headline read, "Fragrance Fortune Feud, Tech's Newest Nose Snubs Family." The article, citing anonymous sources close to the family, painted a picture of me as a volatile, ungrateful eccentric. It claimed my family had funded my hobby for years, sacrificing to support my artistic temperament. It hinted that my breakthrough was not entirely my own, suggesting I had built upon foundational research funded by my father. It was a masterpiece of insinuation, filled with just enough truth to be plausible and just enough poison to be devastating. The article concluded with a quote from a family friend. "It's a classic story of new money. He's forgotten where he came from. Clarissa was only trying to help him protect his newfound wealth, and he threw it back in her face. It's a real tragedy." The betrayal was so profound, it left me breathless. She hadn't just attacked me, she had tried to rewrite my history, to steal the one thing that was truly mine. The lonely, arduous journey of my work. She was trying to poison the very roots of my success. Then came the official letter. On the thick, creamy letterhead of her law firm, it was a cease and desist, followed by a notice of intent to file a lawsuit. She was claiming intellectual property theft, demanding a full accounting of my work, and freezing a portion of my assets pending an investigation. It was ludicrous, a complete fabrication, but she knew the legal system. She knew that a drawn-out public lawsuit, even a frivolous one, could tarnish my name and my relationship with Chevalier, costing me millions in legal fees and reputational damage. She had cornered me, or so she thought. She underestimated two things: my resolve and the loyalty of Anya Sharma. I sat in my quiet Baltimore apartment, the threatening letter in my hand, the slanderous article glowing on my laptop screen. The walls felt like they were closing in. The elation of my success had curdled into a new kind of isolation, one that was colder and more terrifying than the loneliness of my lab. This time, I wasn't just invisible. I was being actively erased, my story rewritten by the very people who were supposed to be its foundation. I felt a tremor of fear, the old feeling of being small and powerless in the face of their polished confidence. For a moment, I considered giving in, offering them a piece of the money just to make it all stop. But then I looked around my lab, at the rows of vials, the stained countertops, the notebooks filled with my frantic, passionate scrawls. This was my truth. I had earned it. I would not let them take it. I picked up the phone and made a call to Geneva. The boardroom at Berman, Cromwell and Finch was the physical embodiment of old-world power. Dark mahogany walls, a table that seemed a mile long, and a view of Central Park that was probably worth more than my entire patent. I sat on one side of the table. On the other sat Clarissa, flanked by two senior partners from her firm, their faces grim and self-important. My parents were there too, seated slightly behind her, positioned as the aggrieved victims. Clarissa was in her element. She was composed, sharp, and armed with a stack of files. She thought this was her battlefield, a negotiation where she held all the leverage. She believed I had come. Alone, a lamb to the slaughter. She began the meeting, her voice smooth and professional. "We're glad you agreed to this meeting, Julian. It shows you're finally ready to be reasonable. We're prepared to be generous. In recognition of your creative contributions, we are willing to settle this matter for a one-time payment of $3 million and the establishment of a family trust to be managed by the firm, into which 20% of all future earnings will be deposited." One of the senior partners cleared his throat. "It's the only way to protect the family's foundational investment in your early-stage research and avoid a protracted and frankly embarrassing public lawsuit." I didn't say a word. I just looked at the door. On cue, it opened. Anya Sharma walked in. She was not alone. Behind her were two of the most fearsome corporate litigators in Europe and a man I recognized as the head of public relations for Chevalier. The atmosphere in the room changed, as if a cold front had blown through. Clarissa's composure cracked. The senior partners sat up straighter, their expressions shifting from condescension to alarm. Anya didn't take a seat. She stood at the head of the table, placing a slim leather portfolio in front of her. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of a billion-dollar corporation. She addressed the senior partners, ignoring Clarissa completely. "You have accused Mr. Vance of intellectual And property theft. You have leaked false and defamatory stories to the press, and you have attempted to file a frivolous lawsuit to extort money from him. This is not only unethical, it is monumentally foolish. She opened the portfolio. This is the complete, time-stamped log of Julian Vance's research, submitted to our independent scientific auditors as part of our acquisition due diligence. It documents every single failure, every breakthrough, every chemical compound he ordered, on a timeline, stretching back 7 years. It proves, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that his work was his, and his alone. She slid a second document across the table. This is a sworn affidavit from Dr. Aris Thorne, a respected professor of organic chemistry, attesting to Julian's singular focus and independent work from his college years onward. She then looked directly at Clarissa, her eyes like chips of ice. "And this," she said, tapping a file, "is a dossier compiled by our corporate intelligence division. It details the catastrophic failure of a real estate venture you personally vouched for, leading to a $20 million loss for your clients, a fact you have concealed from your partners. It seems the can't-miss Hudson Valley project wasn't for family enrichment, but to cover your own disastrous mistakes." Clarissa's face was as white as a sheet. My father made a sputtering noise, looking at her in horror. Anya continued, her voice relentless. "Chevalier does not take kindly to its assets being threatened. Your actions constitute corporate defamation, tortious interference, and attempted fraud. We have prepared a countersuit against this firm and against you, Ms. Vance, personally. We will be seeking $200 million in damages. We will have you disbarred. We will dismantle your reputation so thoroughly that you will not be able to get a job sharpening pencils in this city." She paused, letting the weight of her threat settle in the suffocating silence. "However," she said softly, "Mr. Vance has asked me to offer you a choice. He does not wish for a war. He only wishes to be left alone. So you have one option. You will drop this ludicrous lawsuit. You will issue a public retraction and a full apology to be printed in the same publications where you planted your lies. You will sign a legally binding document agreeing to never contact Mr. Vance again regarding his finances or his work. You will do this by the end of the day. If you do not, the full weight of my company will descend upon you. Am I clear?" No one spoke. Clarissa stared at her hands, trembling. The senior partner, sweating now, just nodded mutely. My parents looked small and broken, their ambition finally crashing against a wall of real power. I stood up. I looked at my sister, not with hatred, but with a kind of weary pity. "I hope you get the help you need, Clarissa," I said quietly. Then I walked out of the room with Anya and her team, leaving the ruins of my old life behind me. I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. The winter in Baltimore was grey and damp, but inside the newly opened greenhouse it was perpetually spring. The air was warm and humid, alive with the scents of damp earth, budding flowers, and fresh creation. This was the first physical site of the Scent Heritage Foundation, the project I had funded with the first installment of my earnings from Chevalier. Our mission was simple: to cultivate and preserve endangered, scent-producing botanicals from around the world, creating a living library of olfactory art. The public retraction from Clarissa's firm had been printed, a dry, legalese-filled apology that nonetheless served its purpose. I heard through the grapevine that she had been quietly forced out of the partnership and was facing an ethics investigation. My parents had sent a single, stilted letter. "We are sorry. We did not understand." I folded it and put it in a drawer. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, a seed of something new. I had set firm boundaries. There were no more family dinners, no more obligatory calls. Communication was polite, infrequent, and on my terms. The power dynamic had been irrevocably reset. My life had found a new rhythm. Days were spent here, in the greenhouse, working with botanists and students, or in my new state-of-the-art lab nearby. I was no longer chasing ghosts in isolation. I was building something real, something that would outlast me. One crisp afternoon, Anya Sharma paid a surprise visit. She walked through the greenhouse, not as a CEO, but as a fellow artist, touching the leaves of a rare Sumatran jasmine, inhaling deeply. "You know, Julian," she said, her gaze fixed on a vibrant orchid, "the most powerful scents are the ones that tell a story, not just of the flower, but of the struggle, the soil, the rain, the fight to survive." She turned to me, a rare, genuine smile on her face. "You haven't just created a scent. You've created a remarkable story." As she was leaving, a young intern, a bright chemistry student from a local community college, ran up to me, her eyes shining. "Mr. Vance," she said breathlessly, "I think I've figured out the stabilization issue with the Madagascar vanilla recreation. Can I show you?" I smiled. "I'd love to see it." As I walked with her toward the lab, I thought about the nature of value. My family had taught me that value was something you could count, something you could display, something that won applause. They were wrong. True value isn't in the destination, it's in the journey. It's in the quiet dedication of the work itself. It's in the scars you earn, the silence you endure, and the moment you realize that your worth was never up for their approval in the first place. It was always there, waiting in the air, waiting for you to be the one to finally breathe it in. Sometimes you have to burn down the forest of expectation to let something true and wild grow. In its place, the world may not understand your passion, but that doesn't make it worthless. It only makes it yours. The greatest success is not changing their minds. It's reaching a place where their minds no longer matter. If this story resonated with you, I'd be honored to hear your own story of finding your path in the comments below. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe for more stories of vindication and resilience. Your presence here is the scent of community, and it's the most valuable one of all.